Hey friends, welcome to Plan in Order. Today I'm giving you a peek inside how I'm planning our 2025-26 homeschool year using Trello. I'll walk you through how it's organized, what each section means, and how this tool helps me stay on track week after week. So in this section, which is the very first part of my Trello board, is where I plan our weekly homeschool schedule. Each column represents a day of the week, Monday through Friday, and the yellow cards are the subject placeholders for that day. They give me a visual cue of our rhythm for the week, and as I plan, I'll drag specific lesson or activity cards underneath the matching subject. Using Trello is really more about our routine flow than rigid timing. I like to be able to drag things around or shift focus based on what's going on for that week. And this is one of the big reasons I really like to use Trello for homeschool. I also use a paper planner, but it feels more permanent when I write it down on paper. I'm not a big fan of, crossing things off or erasing things. And so I just find that this feels more flexible to me, and it feels like I can make it flow with our day-to-day better, which is why Trello is something I use on a day-to-day, where my paper planner is something I use more on a weekly basis. So at the top of each day's column, you'll see that there's a warm-up card. And we do these every day, and while the content changes a bit, the routine is basically the same. Each warm-up will include calendar work, chores, word of the day, poetry, and short copy work activities, usually something important or practical like our home address or phone numbers and things like that. So let's start by looking at Monday. I've listed our subjects in the order that we usually work through them. And so typing, grammar, spelling, reading, social studies, science, math, this is what our Monday typically looks like. This order is very intentional. Typing and grammar both have a computer component to them, where typing is fully on the computer, and then grammar starts with a short video lesson, and then she moves on to workbook pages. Spelling is mostly independent. So I front load her day with computer and solo work so she can ease in to her homeschool day while I'm wrapping up my work day, because I work East Coast hours. I live in the West Coast. I work East Coast hours, so I can start early and be done early, which makes homeschooling while working full time more practical. Then once we're both ready, we transition into the rest of the subjects, which we usually do together. So that little bit of independence at the beginning makes the rest of the day go much smoother for the both of us. When we get into the midweek, it looks a little bit different. On Wednesdays, we add in Spanish, and you'll notice I do keep grammar and spelling and math consistent each day for routine and mastery. Thursdays, then we add in literature, we add in history. As the week progresses, we start doing more read alouds and deeper dives. And then Friday is lighter. We keep grammar, and we still have history and math, but history is the activity portion of our history, and also the Minecraft portion of our history. And so it's a lot of like fun and artsy stuff on Friday. We also rotate in art and health and life skills. This is, Friday is going to give us space to catch up, slow down, or really lean into the creative learning before the weekend. I do also have a done column, and these columns open up and minimize. And so as we're going through and we're finishing lessons that would be like under here, then they would get moved over into done, right? And as we close out the days, then I would be closing these out as well. So I'm only seeing what is still on our plate for the week. There's also a catch-up column in case we fall behind. I know what order to work on things that they are behind, so it's kind of like a loop schedule for catch-up work. And then we move into these orange columns. And these are what I look at first when I'm starting my weekly planning. So the warm-up column, this is where I can see the flow of what I have for each warm-up, right? Chores, calendar. So she has a daily practice quiz every day. This one would be address, but like another one might be phone numbers. Another one might be days of the month, things like that sort of thing. And each of these will break down what that day's warm-up is. And then this card in particular, or all these cards that are staged in this orange column, see how it says daily practice quiz. So this is my card I have teed up for on a week that she has a quiz. So then instead of this warm-up card, which just says daily practice address, it would be the other card so she knows that she's going to have a quiz that day. And on those weeks when she has the quiz, she's just asked to write out the things that we've been practicing from memory. The calendar headers, this holds cards that I have prepped for holidays, testing days, extracurriculars, and anything else that I want to visually mark in our week. And I can easily drag and drop these into the schedule. And finally, the last orange column is the master to-do list. This is pretty self-explanatory. This is just where my brain dump is, where I track things that, tasks that need to be done, work that needs to be prepped, or anything that I need to handle that supports our homeschool. All right, now let's take a look at the second part of my Trello board. So this section is where I break down our curriculum by subject and I track our resources, unit studies, book lists, and materials. It's basically the master planning hub, so I always know what's coming up and things that I need to prep as well. More broken down by subject than the master to do. And here's where I keep all of our lessons organized by subject. Each card in these columns represent a lesson. So for instance, science, these are the science lessons for our science curriculum. And the reason these columns are colored different, because when I start the school year, these will all be colored the same. But right now I'm using kind of the red, yellow, green method to tell me where I am with planning the curriculum for the year. So these will all be the same color when the year actually starts. But this tells me that I'm done with math. All the lessons that are for our math for the year are in here. All of our to-dos are done. Math is done. Math is ready to go. When I plan the first week of school, math is good. I can just slide these lessons over to where they would need to be on the weekly schedule. Science is mostly done, which is why it's yellow, and grammar is mostly done. So grammar, all the lessons are in here, but I need to activate EIW for the year, and then this can be green and it'll be done. Science, I'm still working on building out some of the graphic organizers and then getting the weekly assessments prepped and things like that. So there's still stuff that I need to do. For some of it, I've done the first semester. And so once I get the first semester done for the weekly assessment, no, not the weekly, the article assessments, then I'll probably pause and pick this back up during Christmas break and have the second semester prepped before Christmas break, because I'm kind of just over prepping curriculum at this point in my life. Today, that's how I feel today anyways. I'm over it. So first semester is done. We have a good break in December. I can finish off the second semester then. But that's why these are yellow. And then these are all of the subjects that we will be doing this year. So when I'm planning the week, I simply drag the lesson card into the appropriate day and subject in our weekly schedule. So science, the first lesson would get plopped down. Actually, no, we're doing science Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So it would look like this. Next lesson. Next lesson. And then I would have science planned for the week. If you go into the cards, this is kind of like shorthand for me, but like I know that this is saying, so for the first lesson, we'll be reading Article 1 and doing the assessment that goes along with that. And each assessment for the science is 3 questions. So we'll read an article and then answer 3 questions. And then Article 2 and answer the 3 questions that goes along with that. And that's what our science would look like for Monday. So each lesson card can include notes, instructions, links, checklists, whatever I need to have ready for teaching, or that my daughter will need to have ready to be able to work through the lesson. It keeps the main weekly view clean while giving me details behind the scenes. Let's take a look at Spanish, because Spanish is one that we have audio with. So we have the link to the audio with it. Then I know with Spanish, we're going to be doing tracks 2 through 4 for lesson 1 using the audio that goes along with it. And then I have a note in here that we're going to need the notebook for this lesson as well. And then in my teacher manual, I'll have even more details. And sometimes I get really detailed in here, and sometimes I really just do the bare minimum because I know I'm going to be pulling out the manual anyways. And so, it just tells me what I need and then I can pull it out. But that's what the lesson cards look like that are under each subject column that gets moved over into the schedule as I plan for the week. Okay, so now we have the unit studies column. These are the unit studies that we're planning on doing for the year, deep dive topics that are either seasonal, interest-led, sometimes tied to bigger themes. So for example, we'll be doing a unit on World Bee Day in May, and one on conservation and overconsumption around Earth Day, and then a fun, unit study on making YouTube videos. And this is interest-led. This is something that my daughter asked to do this year. So I'll have things in here as I'm planning out the unit studies. The description will have things that I'm planning, when Earth Day is observed. So make sure I'm planning it kind of around that. And then videos that I have found that tie into this unit study, books that reinforce the unit study, worksheets that I've started to build out for the unit study. And this is kind of where I stage all this and keep everything that I need for the unit study. This is where I keep field trip ideas, Now, I could keep field trip ideas in a few different places. This is generally where I will keep them. But for example, I know for World Bee Day, we have a couple field trips that we're going to take that tie into World Bee Day, and they're in this card specifically. Like, I keep them in this card. But for like other field trips, like for instance, for social studies, I went in and I use Chat GPT, and this is a good example of how I use Chat GPT. I won't use it to like build out unit studies or anything like that, just because it can give false information. I mean, I've seen it done so many times. I really use it more as a resource where it has access to things like scouring the internet and things like that at such a fast pace, and it would be so much easier than me like Googling it per se, to where I plug in my curriculum for social studies and I say, here's what our social studies lessons look like, and these are all the topics that we're covering throughout the year, and can you help me find fun ideas for field trips that are relatively close to me that would tie into these subjects. And so it gave me a ton of ideas. Some of them were places I never even heard of. Like, I've never heard of Rosie the Riveter, the World War II Homefront Museum in Richmond. You know what I mean? Like, did not know that place existed. But, we are going to be covering a little bit of World War II this year. And that's a place that, we might want to go check out. So that's where the field trip ideas kind of fall. Then we have book lists. This is where I track books by the week. So I can go in here and see what books I need. So this week, the only books that I'm going to need are nature study. I have 2 of the 3. This one right here, I'm going to be trying to get from the library. So I usually will look at these. I try to look at them like 2 to 3 weeks in advance, because you never know if there's like if you're going to have to wait to get something to the library. So usually I'll try to look at these 2 to 3 weeks out. Our school starts in 4 weeks. So next week I'll probably go in and try to get that and like request the holder for that book from the library. And that's kind of how each week is broken down. I have the checklist by the subject. So for history, we would want this Magic Tree House, Sunset with the Sabertooths. I think I actually already have this book. I would go check, and if I did, I would check it off. And then whatever's unchecked, first I try to get at the library. And then if not, I'll get it in some other way, like buying it. Slow down. This was the same on week 1. So we'll probably already have this book from week 1. I would again check it off already and then know that I don't need any books for that week. And it's the same concept with manipulatives. So I do it by subject, the things that I'll need for that week. And the reason I like to put this stuff in here is because I like having all the subjects of what I will need in one area, instead of going through each curriculum and looking at what is needed that way. I don't know. In my brain, having it all in one area just works better. And that's why I laid that out that way. And that's how I have my Trello board laid out and how I use it for planning for our homeschool on a weekly basis. I really like Trello for homeschool. It's the visual aspect, it's the flexibility, the fact that I can just change things on the fly if I need to. And in one of my next videos, I'm going to share with you how I actually plan out a homeschool week. Like, I'll record me actually planning out the first week of school, and then give you guys also a look at what my daughter's board looks like when I'm done planning it out, and how I get it from my board to her board really easily. I also want to make sure to note that this is the paid version of Trello. I did have the standard, which is $60 a year, and that's how much I spent when I was using Homeschool Planet. And I switched to this, and I was like, the cost is the same, but then also I have many different boards that we use in our household. So meal planning, trips, just a family home board, and then the board I use for plan and order as well. And recently I've upgraded to the premium, which is double that. And I don't know if that's worth it yet. We'll see. But so far, because I use it so much for my home life, it's been worth it to me. But I wanted to point that out, that if you do have the free version, you won't see some of these features like the collapsible columns. And so I hope you liked this, and hopefully this was helpful. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Like and subscribe if you like this content. I'm really trying to stay consistent with it this year. Last year, third grade really kicked my butt with working full time and then trying to homeschool. But thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your night. Bye.